Joining us now from Berlin to pick up on this subject, Sudha David-Wilp, Deputy Director of the German Marshall Fund's office in Berlin. Good morning to you. Give us a sense of whether or not you think Mr. Macron is going to be able to deliver for Europe this week.
Good morning, Guy. Yeah, that's the $100 million question, whether Mr. Macron could take on the mantle of leader of Europe now that it seems like the torch has passed to him from Angela Merkel. He was here last week in Berlin to coordinate with the Chancellor on policies that are important to Europe. Your colleague mentioned trade, for example, the Iran deal. These are all topics that they are on the same page about, and it is up to him to make sure that President Trump sees that Europe is unified on these two topics and other subjects as well.
But Europe isn't unified on a lot of issues. I mean, that was glaring when Macron went to visit Merkel. She seems to make promises to him and to her coalition partners, the SPD, that she kind of almost laughs off when she goes back to her own caucus, the CDU, in Parliament. I mean, how much of a blockade does Angela Merkel and this union bloc put up when it comes to deeper unification of Europe?
Yes, exactly, Matt. I mean, and that's the whole point. Angela Merkel, ever the balance, she's always doing a balancing act within Europe, within Germany, because she has been Chancellor of a grand coalition. This is the third time now since that she's entered a fourth term in office. And she has to balance a lot of interests. One example, for example, is the military strike. That wasn't a show in Syria, a show of unity among the European powers. Of course, it was the traditional Great Britain and France playing a role with the United States with the strikes against Syria to get rid of the chemical supplies in Syria. And Merkel, on the one hand, says these actions are necessary, but categorically rejected a military role for Germany. And that's going to be irksome with President Trump, who's very keen to have Germany take on a larger military role. And back to your question about European integration, the CDU, the CSU, her own caucus is very skeptical about guaranteeing having financial guarantees in place in Europe because they think that Germany, at the end of the day, will have to foot the bill.
Just looking ahead to the Chancellor's trip to the United States a little later on this week, how big a problem is Germany's current account surplus? The White House has made very clear when it comes to other countries that run similar stories with the United States that the United States is going to do something about it. Are we going to hear about this later on this week? How big a risk does Germany face?
I mean, it seems that Germany is in the, has been sort of the antagonist for Donald Trump when it comes to trade. The last time she was there, almost a year ago, she tried to explain that trade is something that is under the jurisdiction of the European Union. So this would be something that Donald Trump would have to take up with Brussels, not necessarily Berlin. And I'm certain this topic is going to come up again. And Angela Merkel is certainly going to try to show that the German economy is also a win-win or car production in the U.S. is also a win for the U.S. economy, and trade would be detrimental for both sides of the Atlantic. But certainly this will come up. And, Donald Trump has said if the EU takes retaliatory strikes against his tariffs on steel and aluminum, the car industry is also going to face tariffs from the U.S. side.
Well, bringing U.S. cars into Europe results in a 10% tariff, whereas European cars can go there with a 2.5% tariff. That's going to be the kind of thing that needs to be leveled. And really, beyond the current account surplus, the budget surplus has to be a concern for Donald Trump. I mean, the U.S., France, and the U.K. are spending money to go and right wrongs in Syria, from his point of view. And yet Germany doesn't chip in because, I mean, what would they do it with? They don't even have military equipment with which to make a strike, even if they wanted to. They're not spending enough money to support the NATO military. How is that going to change?
I mean, that's absolutely correct, Matt. He's going to want Germany to spend more. In fact, the European namers of Germany also feel the same way. And military spending is unfortunately something that the Germans still can't get over. Only about a quarter of Germans think that the country needs to play a more significant role in military affairs in the global, on a global level. And that's a problem because right now Germany does not make the 2% commitment that we've all made, all countries made during the NATO summit in 2014, and it doesn't look like they will reach that 2% goal by the end of this legislature period.